ज्ञानानन्दमयं देवं निर्मलस्फटिकाकृतिम् आधारं सर्वविद्यानां हयग्रीवम् उपास्महे सदाशिव समारम्भां शङ्कराचार्य मध्यमाः अस्मत् आचार्य पर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरु परम्परां वन्दे गुरु परम्परां वन्दे। श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। Namaskaram, namaste, greetings. I'm Pushkala Gopal. I was asked to tell you where I was born, and that was Chelmsford, Essex in United Kingdom. And I was asked to tell you where I'm reaching out to you from, and that is Mylapore in Chennai, where my roots go back. It's a pleasure to be with all of you on Munch UK today. And my journey from the UK happened when I was a babe in arms, and apparently I traveled around half the world on a boat with my parents to get back to India. My early memories are those in Agra. My father was a captain in the army. He used to cycle to work, cycle home. Parents used to play badminton in the evenings, and my memories of Agra are red, juicy watermelons in summer, green peas in the winter, and several trips to the Taj because visitors would come and we'd go every time. Very soon, when I was about 3 years old, I was shifted to Chennai to live with my aunt, my father's older sister. And in this environment in Chennai, my early memories again are those of waking up to the sounds of Meluko Vaya. So these are songs from the Utsava Sampradaya of Tyagaraja, which my aunt would sing regularly in the morning, and Purayama Makamam from Narayana Tirtha's collection of songs. And the day would start not with a ritualistic puja ritual, but a ritualistic musical ritual. And my aunt herself was a very well-known Harikatha exponent in those days. And so Bhajana Sampradaya and Harikatha was the family's practice. Of course, performing came in the next round of activities. My aunt used to perform kacheris, sing on the radio. Her name is Sushila Achyutaraman. And at one point, of course, she stopped performing in public. But after that, I had the benefit of her actually singing for Bharatanatyam, and of course practicing regularly at home and taking me to various concerts. Now, when I was 8, I was moved to Hyderabad to join my parents, and I had 2 brothers by then. And Hyderabad started off with routine music classes in the house, lots of kacheris, and my father was quite active in the South Indian Cultural Association. And again, Hyderabad was a lovely place for introduction to Hindustani music. So memories of Hyderabad are full of recitals that one heard in a variety of situations. The dance forms one saw in Hyderabad were Kathak, Kuchipudi, and Bharatanatyam. My own Bharatanatyam training started with Guru K.N. Pakirswamy Pillai younger brother of Guru Dandayudapani Pillai in Hyderabad. With him, I went up to the stage of Gajja Puja and then went on to Srimati Malati Srinivasan in Chennai, who was a disciple of Dandayudapani Pillai himself. She had been with him in Kalakshetra and then moved out of Kalakshetra with Guru Dandayudapani when he left Kalakshetra. So the practice of adavus and things were from the Kalakshetra style, but Dandayudapani himself was a composer, and so a lot of the pieces that they did were contemporary to that time. They didn't do that many of the Tanjore quartet pieces which preceded this period in time by a good many decades. Having said that, Dandayudapani used to be great at doing tillanas, and his most famous student was Sri Vidya, amongst many other dancers who've been with him but who have also been with other gurus, but Vidya was exclusively one of his pupils, and Hema Rajagopalan also does the same style. Now, Dandayudapani sir had his younger brother Dakshinamurti in Delhi. So after our Hyderabad years, we moved to Delhi and I was able to continue with that tradition. In Hyderabad, the influences apart from music were that I went to a school called Vidyaranya, and Vidyaranya was about encouraging all of us to think quite freely. Our principal, Srimati Shanta Rameshwar Rao, who I remember almost every day, would expose us to lectures by various people. She herself was influenced by J. Krishnamurti and encouraged us to question anything that we didn't understand or couldn't accept or didn't believe. So that was something that I took with me when we left Hyderabad to go on to Delhi. Now in Delhi, life was different. I was in college, and as a colonel in the army, my father had flats allotted to him that were not in a place where one could ask dance masters to come or travel much. And in that instance, there were two families. One was my mother's cousin, Mr. Chandrasekharan, and his wife Kamakshi, who is a very good Vainika. They would let me have classes at their home, which was very close to Khan Market in the middle of Delhi. And in my last year of college, Mr. and Mrs. Ramachandran, Uma Raman's grandparents, used to have me at their home in the evenings, and my father would come and collect me at sometimes 8 p.m., sometimes 9 p.m., no cell phones, so I would just wait there having done cultural things. Uma's grandfather actually taught me the Lalita Sahasranamam at that time, and I remember this period with great affection. Now Delhi, the training with Dakshinamurti sir really took my skills in the understanding of rhythm forward. But I have a little story here. So one day he said, "Why are you doing this boring Tisra Laripo all the time? Do Mishram." And so we came to this point where we went ta, kai, kai, ta, ta, tam, kita, ta, tam, de, tam, kita, ta, tai, ta, tai. Now you all know this probably. Tam, di, tam, kita, ta, tai, ta, tai. Then when we come to the third speed, sir did tam, tam, dita. Tari kita taka kai tatai, tari kita taka tam dita, tari kita taka. So I said, "Sir, why are you saying the third speed like this?" And he said, "Ha, idenna pudu araichi?" Meaning, what is this new research? So I said, "Sir, for Tisra Laripu, we speak in proportionate third speeds, but here you're just saying the tam tita in the third speed and saying the rest of it in medium speed." So he said, "Don't ask me all this, just dance it. People have done it this way for years." Then he came back the next class and said, "Why, your Kalakshetra also does it like this." At that time and at no other time have I been a direct student of Kalakshetras, but I had gone to the Dhananjayans for a short summer stint and I came back. And so he was not exactly unhappy, but wherever he had a chance to say, "That's how they'll do it in your Kalakshetra," he used to say that. Anyway, So then I said, but that's fine if they do it that way. Why is the Salaripu done this way? Because when you do the hands, you do tam tita, tari kita taka, and again you do it in medium speed. You don't do it in takita takadini, takita takadini. So then the following class he came up with tam tita, kirtakatai, tatai, kirtakatam tita, kirtakatai, tatai, kirtaka. So he had found the solution and embraced it then and there. This must have been in 1971. I'll come back to another Dakshinamurti sir story if I have time later, but he was a lovely man and very open to engaging with new pieces. Now when I'd had my Gatrim in Chennai earlier in 1969, my teacher Malati again was very open to taking ideas both from my aunt and from my mother. And I also had another teacher there at that time, Bhama Ramanan, who was working with Malati teacher. And she used to bring elements of folk and other traditions into the class. So my Gatrim had a mixture of a Tyagaraja composition, Meera Bhajan, Kurati. It was quite long. Nevertheless, pieces were created in front of me at that stage. So the idea of pieces being created through materials from literary and musical sources was something that I grew up with. Now, in Delhi, something happened during my college years, and that was the Indian War with Bangladesh. At that time, having parents in the services makes you have a different outlook to what you need to do at that time. And so I got quite involved in some of the social work schemes of collecting blankets for people on the front line, and incidentally had the opportunity to perform once to a group of Jawans and then once to a group of airmen. And the response that came back from there made me feel that I was giving something of great value that I was enjoying enormously, but then there was something happening in terms of the response to a performance art. And at that point, I just deviated from spending the 6 or 8 hours a day it would take to keep on top of your maths degree. I did pick up the degree with help from a couple of senior mathematicians towards the end of my course. I managed to clear it. But then I knew that my shift was going to be towards the performing arts. Now, from the family, I had a lot of support. And a couple of years later, I found myself in Chennai. I'd been married by this time, also had a baby daughter. And I was able to go to the Dhananjayans for 2 years to work on my Natya full time. That was an amazing period. My mother had moved from Delhi to look after my daughter for me in Chennai with me so that I could attend class. And my grandmother, her mother, had moved from Chennai to Delhi to look after my father and the establishment. So all three ladies of 3 generations were dislocated at that time. But all of this was quite important because as an army officer's daughter, if I hadn't got the scholarship, I don't think I would have been able to afford to be able to stay away and work at the dance classes and at improving one's skills. In this context, I should place on record my gratitude to my husband Gopal, who had to do with quite a few hardships to have stayed away from me at that time. And the scholarship over, I went back via Mumbai, where Gopal was posted. We then found ourselves in Delhi, and again a new spell of work, interest, classes, several things started up. I hope we're okay technically. The lights seem to have disappeared. Okay. So this time in Delhi, I managed to start some teaching at Sardar Patel Vidyalaya, and a great inspiration was Vibhaben Parthasarthi, a wonderful far-seeing educationist who had experience of being in Ram Gopal's troupe at some point of time during her travels. She started encouraging me to think of who I was teaching Natya to, and how can I make it relevant to them? Once that bug bit me, I started to do a lot of exercises, make pieces that were not on Krishna, Rama, Shiva, although that aspect of work carried on. And the end of that spell made me want to apply to widen my knowledge of education techniques and the use of art in a creative situation with people who may not be trained in the idiom. And that brought me to Britain on a scholarship. But I have to share a moment in time that really influenced me. In 1972, I saw a performance by Professor C.V. Chandrasekhar, where he did Rupa Mujuchi Varnam on Lord Shiva. Second half of the program, he did Yashoda Harike Palni Jhulave, where he plays Mother Yashoda. And in between, of course, he did a Dashavataram, showing many different characters. When he did Yashoda, I started choking up, tearing, and I couldn't stop crying even till I went home. I was so moved by this personality. His technique, of course, is impeccable, has always been so. But the characterization and the emotion and the way he was able to relate lyrics and the music to the movement, I had a great experience. And I wanted to go and study with him. But he was living in Benares in those days, and for a single girl, I was still in college at that time, my family put their foot down. And there's another little interesting tidbit. When I wanted to go to the Dhananjayans in Chennai again, my grandfather said, why would you go to somebody from Kerala to learn Bharatanatyam? And then, of course, promptly we had Srimati N.S. Jayalakshmi, who's my father's cousin's sister-in-law, and she was asked, this child is saying that she wants to go to the Dhananjayans. Can she? Should we permit her? And Jaya teacher, of course, waved the green flag, as she always does. And then I found myself with the Dhananjayans. And I was with them at a phase in their lives when Anna would be able to take a class for me for 2 hours in the morning. And it would be followed up by Shantaka, who was very homebound because she had young Satyajit. And Satyajit would lie in wait for me and wait with stones and throw them at me and say, "PUSHKALA unna adikuve." So my memories of Satyajit, even when I see him now as a fully grown, beautiful dancer and photographer, I can just think of "PUSHKALA unna adikuve." So this was my Madras stint. Then, of course, to come back to the years in Delhi, a wonderful experience I had was doing a play called Nandan, Kadai, directed by directors who knew Hindi, but the writer was Indira Parthasarthi. And the character that I played in that was that of a Devadasi who understands all of Nandan's angst. And the Devadasi character, because there was spoken dialogue, there were moments of listening to music, hearing pieces from the Nandanar Kadai Charitam. All of this really gave me an insight into what it would feel like to just experience the dance as an extension of one's being and one's quest. Now, this is not something that comes very easily, but if it is promoted, then this side of your experience is totally different from the other side, which enjoys movements and space and rhythms. And that phase of my development really was in the company of my very dear colleague Unni Krishnan, with whom we had first our own company, PUSHKALA, GOPAL and Unni Krishnan, and then Akshaya Dance Theatre. And in those years, the kind of pieces and the repertoire we developed took into account also the energies of the Kathakali style and its potential. We went into a phase of doing quite a few dance dramas funded by the Arts Council, and of them, Beauty and the Beast, Taming of the Shrew. We worked with director Hilary Westlake and composer Dr. L. Subramaniam. And the experiences were really opened up your mind to other ways of working. And from Hillary, one of the techniques that we learned was how to loosen up the face before performance, more warming up techniques, and also how to get the emotion if you just say something in your own mother tongue that lets you feel that, and then you translate it to your action. That's a technique that doesn't cease to amaze me, because I've been able to use it with pupils also. When I came to London, it was with the British Council Fellowship, and David Henshaw, my guru in red, as I used to call him, was an amazing tutor, in the sense he would give me space to do things, often come and see performances with me, and use my time in tutorials to talk about practical things and how we might shape other work that came out of that. And I'm so happy that we had this year, because after that, David contributed a lot to the world of Indian dance, both through the Academy and the ISTD. I was also briefly at the Bhavan, but one of the things that happened at the Bhavan that I will never forget is a workshop that I went to for blind children. And Dr. Nandakumara and I both went to do this, and it was the first time I'd done anything like this. And the way we planned it and the way it worked out, it stays as one of the moments of inspired work that happened through me. But I think, it would have been the goddess Saraswati acting through us at that time. It was an unforgettable experience, using voice, syllables, rhythms, stamping, and a lot of other things, but the children were all blind. That actually made me determined to work in the area of taking Indian dance to education. I was Director Academy for a lucky period when The Adventures of Mowgli and Return of Spring were done. We had a third project in the pipeline, thinking about the Arabian Nights, with a strong male Kathak dancer as the Caliph, and a very clever female lead from the Kathak style as Shahrazad, but it never saw the light of day because the Academy had to move towards other directions after the second production. Return of Spring was very important in the history of dance in the UK, because it brought together professionals from different regions, not just London. And it also brought together a few of the younger, growing performers along with established performers of that time. And there were a couple of professionals from Kalakshetra working with the group. So from the first show to the last show, you could see the way the whole production had evolved, and it was a wonderful experience. Now, Academy, I think people know because of Meera's work, and now Subhadra is with the Academy. To go back to my own days in the UK, my shift to looking at the syllabus which the Academy mooted for the ISTD. I wrote the first draft syllabus in Bharatanatyam, but the movement was great in bringing together professionals of both Bharatanatyam and Kathak together, and we still keep rewriting the syllabus. Some of us are very diligent. I mean, fortunately, I haven't done that recently, but we are all a team and we work together, and we really enjoy the give and take that the group gives us. There was one story that I had meant to tell you about our performing days, and that was after we did a tour showing both Bharatanatyam and Kathakali. One of the Arts Council reports from the director said, this dancer Unni is amazing, but it would be so good if he didn't hold his feet in the crab-like fashion. I think things have changed a lot now. Report writing is also very informed, and the number of dancers that are in and out of all the regions have really brought life in Britain, dance life, Natya life in Britain, to a very exciting point. Those of you who've seen the last few days know this. Now I'm going to do a little piece of Abhinaya, and This has been facilitated by Prince Ramavarma, who sent me a recording which I could use for this occasion. Now, Prince Varma, for those who are keen students of dance, if you listen to some of his expositions on YouTube, he gives you word meanings and he tells you how the Sangeetam has to work with the Sahityam. So I'm just going to show you a small snippet. Oh, please play the... It's Aliveni. Thank you. To wrap up, I have two pictures to show. My father and my mother. My father's with us in spirit. He somehow managed to see every piece of work I've created, despite just being an army officer. And my mother, of course, was one of the reasons that I stopped dancing some years ago, because when I couldn't have her with me all the time to sing for me, she was busy looking after raising my children for me, my incentive to just perform and create seemed to want to be diverted to making other people dance. And when I was in school in Hyderabad, there was a little story. People would ask me, as children normally do, as to where I was born. And when I said Chelmsford, they didn't understand. So one day I said London. And our class teacher was another army officer's wife. And she said, "This child is lying. I have to take her to the headmistress." Now, nothing came of that story, but after that, I used to get teased all the time, "Pussycat, pussycat, where have you been? Have you been to London to look at the Queen?" And through a project for Aditi, which was an Asian Dance Trust, and other people before me have mentioned this at the Nehru Gallery, I did eventually sight the Queen. So, thanks to Pratapji, who actually got me this photograph because I was not in the country at that time. For about 10 years, I was working for 3 months in the UK and 3 months in India. And I've now come back. Family responsibilities are tying me down here. But I've got involved with a group here called Prayatnam, who are into exams for aspiring dance students and qualifications for teachers in this country. So in a way, I think the plans in terms of being busy and using one's experience in time is on. What I do want to say is that I want to thank my gurus, the Dhananjayans, who've been margadarshis. They show you the path without pinning you down to anything. And if I've been able to do that for the next generation, within the family, my daughter is artistic director of Sanskriti UK. While that may not be too much of a surprise because she was taught by the Dhananjayans and raised by my parents, the lockdown has enabled me to teach my grandchildren. I see them for a music session separately, my granddaughter and my grandson, almost every day of the week, which is a great treat. And I do see some of my students online. They say normally that when the guru, the planet guru, decides to go retrograde, lots of peculiar things happen. But in Britain, and particularly with artists, the wonderful thing that's happened is the kind of guruship and the shukra forging hands sideways, where the entire profession is coming together, supporting, being happy. And thank you for making me a part of this. I have to thank Ambika, Suhani, Vidya, and Shubha Lakshmi, apart from Meera. And here I have 3 people with me on my crew, 4 people here. I have Amrita, Raju, and Sita, and then I have Matangi Kumar, who have helped me to reach you today. Straight after me is Nilima Devi, a very respected exponent of